Good evening, and welcome to Sleep Journeys. Tonight, we'll spend a full day inside the stone walls of a medieval castle keep. We'll rise with the soldiers at dawn, walk through smoky kitchens, pause in the bustling courtyard, and even visit the less glamorous corners, the latrines and the night watch, all told in a calm, slow rhythm so that you can drift away while still traveling back in time. If you enjoy these long journeys through history, do consider giving this video a like or leaving a gentle comment about where in the world you're listening from tonight. And of course, you're welcome to subscribe so that you don't miss the next evening's journey. Now, settle in, let the firelight fade, and let's step quietly into the keep. You awake to the muffled clang of the dawn bell, its iron tongue echoing down through layers of stone until it seems to rattle your very ribs. The keep has stood for centuries, and each strike of that bell feels as though it might loosen a bit of mortar, shake a few bats from their rafters, and disturb the quiet dreams of every soul within these grey walls. Yet, it is not an unpleasant sound. There is something reassuring about a bell that has rung in more or less the same fashion every morning for longer than any living soldier can remember. It is a sound that ties today to yesterday, and yesterday to the day before, linking all who ever slept on these rough pallets in one endless chain of bleary mornings. The air is chill, for castles are never quite as warm as one might wish. Even with braziers glowing in the great hall below, the draughts creep through arrow slits and up stairwells like determined little spirits, keen to nip at noses and toes. A few soldiers groan as they pull themselves upright from straw mattresses, shaking out cloaks that smell faintly of smoke and sweat. Their first words of the day are not noble speeches about loyalty or valor, but muttered complaints about stiff joints, sore backs, and the coldness of their feet. In truth, very little changes in that regard across the centuries. The morning grumble is timeless. From the narrow window, one sees the faintest strip of light edging over the horizon, painting the world beyond the battlements in shades of ash blue and pale silver. It is not yet full daylight, and the village huddled in beneath the castle walls lies still in half shadow. A cock crows somewhere below, its voice a shrill challenge to the bell, though one imagines the bell would win any contest of volume. The fields beyond lie crusted with frost, and smoke begins to twist from a few scattered cottages, as villagers, too, begin their day. Inside the keep, the soldiers' routine is as rigid as the stone that surrounds them. Armor must be inspected, straps tightened, weapons checked. Yet at this hour, before the captain makes his rounds, most men are more interested in rubbing sleep from their eyes and coaxing warmth into their fingers. The clatter of a whetstone is heard as one diligent fellow drags it across the edge of a sword. Another hauls on his boots and bangs them against the floor to shake out yesterday's dust. A third yawns so loudly it seems almost a roar, earning himself a few chuckles from his comrades. Even here, amongst stern duty, humour finds a foothold. The smell of baking bread begins to drift up from the kitchen below. It is the most welcome herald of morning in any castle, that simple, earthy scent of yeast and crust, promising sustenance after a night of chill. The cooks have been awake long before the soldiers, for bread does not bake itself, and porridge must be simmered slowly if it is to feed dozens. Downstairs, the kitchen is a chaos of iron pots, crackling fires, and the occasional quarrel over whose turn it is to fetch water from the well. But here, in the soldiers' quarters, it manifests as a faint, delicious perfume that lures men downstairs with quicker steps than any bell could manage. As the men shuffle down, you follow, boots thumping on worn stairs, hand brushing the rough wall for balance. The great hall awaits, its high beams draped in banners, its hearth already roaring with flames. Benches and trestle tables are set out, plain wooden things that creak beneath the weight of hungry men. The cooks shuffle in and out with trenchers of bread, bowls of steaming pottage thick with barley, onions, and whatever meat scraps could be coaxed from the pantry. Nothing here is extravagant. This is not a feast day, merely another morning in a long season of mornings. Still, the warmth of the food and the companionship of fellow eaters makes the fare more than sufficient. You settle on a bench beside a group of archers, their bows stacked neatly against the wall. One lad, scarcely more than 16, is so drowsy he nearly dunks his nose in his bowl. Another elbows him awake, and the two exchange quiet laughs before tearing into the bread with the single-minded focus of the perpetually hungry. The talk is low and steady, a jest about the captain's gruff voice, a mutter about the taste of the ale last night, a remark on the weather. No grand matters of state are discussed, those belong to the lords in their chambers. Here it is simple life, measured in meals, watch shifts, and the occasional drill in the courtyard. At the high table sits the steward, a thin fellow with sharp eyes and a ledger never far from reach. He surveys the men as much as the food, ever watchful that no one eats more than their portion. Waste is not tolerated in a keep where supplies must last the season. His presence is a reminder that even within stone walls, order is maintained as much by quill and tally as by sword and shield. Once the meal is done, bowls scraped clean and crusts devoured, the men rise. Some head for the training yard, where blunted blades will clash and shields thud under repeated blows. Others prepare for duty atop the walls, scanning horizon and road for signs of trouble. A pair of unlucky fellows draw the short straw and tramp off towards the latrines, grumbling but resigned. Life in a castle keep is not all gallant charge and trumpet blast. It is also fetching water, carrying logs, and tending to the less glamorous necessities of human existence. The day has only just begun, and already the castle hums with a steady rhythm of duty. Beyond these walls lie uncertain lands, but within there is routine, camaraderie, and the endless cycle of waking, working, eating, and sleeping. For now, with the fire warming your back and the echo of the bells still fading in your ears, you feel yourself part of this stone-bound world, bound to it as securely as the mortar holds the keep's grey towers. The hall gradually empties, the scrape of benches and the shuffle of boots giving way to a quieter murmur. The soldiers drift off towards their duties, some with resigned expressions, others with a sort of grim cheer, as though convinced that whistling through the morning makes the drudgery half as bad. The fire still crackles in the hearth, throwing light across the flagstones, but the smell of breakfast soon gives way to the sharper sense of labour, smoke, leather oil, damp wall, and the faint tang of iron. Step through the heavy oaken doors, and you find yourself in the kitchens, a cavernous chamber beneath the hall, its arched ceiling blackened by centuries of smoke. Here, the true engines of the keep labour entered. Great hearths roar, pots the size of barrels bubble and steam, and the air is so thick with heat and scent that your eyes prickle. The cooks, flour-dusted and red-faced, move with an energy born of long habit. Knives thunk against chopping boards, spoons stir, hands knead dough upon broad wooden tables that bear the scars of countless meals prepared before. A boy, no more than 10, scurries past clutching a bucket almost as large as himself. He slips on a smear of spilled grease, rights himself with a squeak, and scurries on, earning laughter from two women pounding garlic with pestles the size of mallets. These women chatter as they work, their voices rising above the din. They speak of neighbours, of whose cow has calved, of which child has caught a cough. In the middle of this domestic tangle stands the cook himself, a broad-shouldered fellow with the authority of a general. His word carries more weight than a sergeant's, for no man can fight on an empty stomach. The menu for the day is nothing fancy. Porridge stretched with peas, broth heavy with cabbage, bread by the cartload. Meat, when it appears, is a luxury rationed carefully, salted and smoked in advance to last the long winter. Even so, there is something hearty about this food. It fills the belly, and more importantly, it fills the hours. Preparing it, serving it, cleaning after it, these tasks alone employ half the household. Beyond the kitchens lies the courtyard, and stepping into it is like entering another world entirely. The air is brisk, fresher here than inside the smoky hall, tinged with the smell of horse and hay. The sun is climbing steadily, though its light is pale and thin, as though reluctant to burn off the mist clinging to the outer walls. The yard is alive with motion, clatter of armour, ring of hammer upon an anvil, barked commands from the drill square. Along one side, blacksmiths are already at their forge, sparks leaping as hammer meets glowing metal. Their work is relentless, mending a bent helm, tightening the rivets on a mail shirt, fashioning arrowheads by the dozen. Each strike is measured, each hiss of quenching deliberate, a rhythm that seems as natural as breathing. In the center of the yard, a knot of soldiers train with blunted swords. They circle, strike, parry, retreat. The clash of steel on steel is both harsh and musical, echoing off the high stone walls. A few younger lads wince at every blow, too eager in their lunges, too slow in their guards, while older veterans smirk knowingly, letting their opponents tire themselves before landing a decisive thwack upon padded shoulders. The sergeant bellows at them all impartially, reminding the overconfident that there is no glory in a bruised rib, and the timid that timidity will not keep one alive on the wall. To one side, archers line up against straw butts, bows creaking as strings are drawn. The arrows fly with a hiss, thugging into their targets with such force the shafts quiver for long seconds after. Each man checks his grouping with quiet pride, nodding when the cluster is tight, muttering oaths when the shot strays wide. A boy darts forward to collect spent arrows, his quick steps and ducking head showing that this is not his first day dodging wayward shafts. Elsewhere, the more humble duties continue. Servants fetch water from the well at the courtyard centre, lowering the creaking bucket into cool depths and hauling it up with a splash. Others split logs for the fires, their axes biting deep, chips flying into the crisp air. A pair of washerwomen scrub linens upon a board, knuckles red with cold water, their laughter bright despite the chill. Even the latrines, tucked discreetly in a corner, demand their share of attention. A poor lad with a shovel and a sour face does the thankless work of tending them, muttering curses under his breath as he goes. Above all this rises the keep itself, looming and solemn, its windows like watchful eyes upon the yard. From the parapets, guards pace steadily, spears glinting as they pass in and out of sunlight. Their silhouettes stand sharp against the morning sky, a reminder that while life inside hums with ordinary chores, vigilance never rests. Beyond the walls lie woods, fields, and roads, and who knows what trouble might stare upon them. Back in the yard, a commotion draws attention. A delivery cart has arrived through the gatehouse. It is piled with sacks of grain and a barrel or two of ale, gifts from a surrounding estates, or perhaps part of a tenant's due. Men swarm to unload it, shoulders straining, while the steward hovers nearby with his ever-present ledger, ensuring not a single sack goes uncounted. The steward's quill scratches as busily as any sword swings, his stern gaze turning even stout soldiers sheepish if they look inclined to filch a crust. For all its bustle, the courtyard is strangely soothing. Each sound, the ring of hammer, the swish of broom, the slap of laundry on stone, blends into a steady rhythm, a heartbeat of the keep. It is not grand, not glamorous, but it is alive, and one feels the comfort of being part of a place where every hand knows its work, every task has its time, and the day stretches ahead with reassuring familiarity. The morning is only half spent, and already the castle has shifted from the yawning uncertainty of dawn to the measured confidence of daily routine. Soon there will be orders for patrols, errands to the village below, and preparations for the Lord's midday meal. But for now, as the mist lifts and the sun struggles higher, you stand in the courtyard, listening to the busy hum, feeling the life of the keep thrumming around you, as constant and dependable as the stone beneath your boots. By the time the sun has climbed high enough to warm the battlements, the keep has shifted into a new rhythm. The morning's bustle softens into something slower, but no less urgent, for midday means one thing above all, the Lord's meal. Everything must be readied, everything polished, everything served just so. Castles do not thrive on battle alone. They thrive on order, spectacle, and the careful feeding of both bellies and pride. The kitchens, already a storm earlier, now resemble a full tempest. The fires roar so fiercely that even standing at the doorway makes you break into a sweat. The cooks bellow orders like captains in the thick of combat. More onions! Where's the salt? For pity's sake, don't let that pot boil over again. Apprentices and servants dart between the tables like startled rabbits, carrying trays of herbs, haunches of meat, and baskets of turnips that still smell faintly of earth. The air is thick with aromas, roasting fowl, sizzling fat, freshly baked loaves, a blend so rich it makes your mouth water even if you ate not long ago. At the heart of the chaos stands the head cook, wielding a ladle like a mace. His brow shines with sweat, his tunic dusted with flour and grease, but his eyes are sharp as daggers. One glance from him can still the chatter of a quarrelsome pair of scullions faster than any slap. He knows precisely how long a goose must roast, how much spice a broth can bear, how hot the oven should be for the delicate custard intended for the high table. He does not cook meals. He commands an army of pots, pans, and people, and heaven help the boy who mistakes salt for sugar. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the keep, the Lord's servants attend to subtler matters. The great hall is swept, the rushes on the floor changed to fresher, sweeter-smelling ones, sprinkled with herbs to cover the less pleasant odours that always creep into such spaces. Banners are shaken out, their colours brightened by the dusting. The long trestle tables are set out again, but this time with a touch more ceremony. Trenchers of fresh bread, pewter pitchers filled with ale, wooden platters polished to a dull shame. At the high end of the hall, the Lord's table is laid with greater care, finer cloths, polished silver, a great chair carved with lions' heads and gilded, just enough to remind everyone who sits at its head. The soldiers, having spent their mornings sweating in the yard or pacing the walls, now trickle back in small groups. Some stand in clusters, chatting idly about practice blows gone awry or bets placed on the next contest. A few lean wearily against the walls, glad for a moment's rest before being summoned to another duty. Their presence is felt, if not seen, for no noble meal is complete without the quiet reminder of men-at-arms close at hand. Protection and spectacle are twinned in the castle, as inseparable as bread and salt. The Lord himself makes his appearance with a kind of casual gravity. He is not garbed in shining armour or a velvet robe, for this is not a feast day, but even in a simple tunic, he carries himself with the certainty of one who commands stone, steel, and souls alike. His household follows, his lady, her gown rich though practical, a gaggle of children whose restless energy tests the patience of both parents and servants, and a handful of retainers who never let themselves be far from favour. They enter to bows and murmured greetings, and take their places at the high table as though the entire hall exists for their comfort, which, in truth, it does. The meal itself is a curious blend of abundance and restraint. To the Lord's table come the choicer cuts of meat, the dishes seasoned with imported spices, the delicate pastries and honeyed fruits. To the soldiers and servants, bowls of broth, hunks of bread, and joints of boiled beef more sinew than flesh. Yet no one goes hungry, and in a world where famine is always a spectre at the door, that alone is cause for satisfaction. As the meal progresses, the hall fills with sound, the clatter of spoons, the scrape of benches, the murmur of conversation. At the high table, a minstrel strums a lute, singing softly of a knight's valour or a maiden's beauty. His voice is pleasant, though not enough to quiet the louder jokes of soldiers who laugh at one another's expense, or the squeals of a child trying to sneak a sweetmeat before her mother notices. The Lord raises his cup now and then to acknowledge a toast, his steward ever watchful at his side, ready to note in his ledger which barrel of ale has been broached, which side of beef carved. Every castle meal, no matter how routine, is a little performance. The hierarchy is displayed in who sits where, in who eats what, in who is served first and who last. To the untrained eye, it may look like little more than a noisy lunch, but it is in truth a daily rehearsal of the social order, as important as any military drill. Each man and woman plays their part. The Lord at the centre, the soldiers at the edge, the servants in motion like stage hands, and the food itself as both nourishment and symbol. When at last the Lord dabs his mouth with a cloth and leans back in his chair, the meal is effectively over. The remains are cleared swiftly, the leftovers carried away to feed dogs, pigs, or perhaps tomorrow's stew. The soldiers return to their duties, the servants scurry back to their errands, and the hall, once full of heat and noise, grows quieter. Only the hearth remains lively, its flames licking the logs, a constant presence that watches the ebb and flow of the castle's life. The sun, now well past its peak, casts long beams through the narrow windows, illuminating motes of dust that dance lazily in the air. The day is half spent, yet much remains. Outside, the villagers tend their fields. Inside, soldiers prepare for the next watch, and cooks begin to think, reluctantly but inevitably, about the evening meal. Life in the keep is a wheel that never stops turning, a rhythm that carries everyone along with it. The whole, once so alive with the rumble of voices and the clatter of dishes, has grown hushed again. Only the hearth persists, a steady flame gnawing at the logs, its crackle a counterpoint to the occasional footsteps echoing down the stone passageways. Midday has passed. The castle has slipped into that curious lull which comes when bellies are full and the work of the day resumes. Step back into the courtyard and the quiet is deceptive. It is not the hush of idleness, but the hum of industry. Each person bent to some duty. The soldiers, having taken their share at table, return to the training ground. The clatter of swords and the bark of orders rise once more, though softened by the afternoon light. Their drills seem endless. Form up, advance, shield wall, break, reform. To the untrained eye, it might appear a dance of brute force, but in truth, it is a ritual, repeated until muscle remembers what the mind need no longer command. On the far side of the yard, the blacksmith's hammer continues its tireless beat, striking sparks that dance like fireflies in the shade. He has a breastplate on his anvil today, dented from some past skirmish or perhaps an overzealous practice blow. With each strike the dent yields, the surface smoothing, as though the armor itself resents imperfection. Apprentices pump the bellows, their arms straining, faces flushed, learning the rhythm that all smiths must master. The air is heavy with the metallic tang of hot iron, mingled with the acrid sweetness of charred coal. Elsewhere, masons patch a stretch of the outer wall, their chisels clicking as they fit new stones into old gaps. The wall is already centuries old, yet it is never finished, never truly complete. Stone, like men, weathers and crumbles, and must be tended constantly if the keep is to stand proud against wind, rain, and war alike. The masons mutter to one another as they work, their words half lost beneath the scrape of trowels. They treat the wall almost as a patient, coaxing it back to health one stone at a time. The steward, thin and sharp as a raven, moves between yard and hall with his ever-present ledger. He notes the arrival of a new cart of firewood, the number of loaves baked for supper, the tally of arrows repaired that morning. His quill scratches ceaselessly, a sound less dramatic than sword on shield, but no less essential. A castle without records is like a body without a pulse. Food, arms, and labour must be counted, measured, and balanced, or else all would descend into chaos. Men may mutter that he is miserly, that he eyes their portions too narrowly, but none dispute his importance. When famine comes, and it always does, sooner or later, it is the steward's careful tallies that decide whether the garrison survives or starves. Within the keep, quieter labours unfold. The laundry is hauled up to dry upon ropes strung across the upper yard, fluttering in the wind like poor man's banners. The chambermaids scrub at rush mats and replace them with fresh cattings, scattering lavender to sweeten the air. They polish candlesticks, mend torn linens, sweep stairwells. No task is too small, for the lord and his household demand a level of order that belies the roughness of stone walls. A noble may forgive a bent spear or a dented helm, but never a dusty chamber or stale-smelling bedclothes. The children of the household, restless after their meal, tumble into the courtyard under the nurse's eye. They chase one another across the flagstones, brandishing sticks as swords, shrieking with glee until a soldier growls at them to keep clear of the practice yard. They scatter like sparrows, laughter trailing behind, their games as much a part of the castle's life as any drill or chore. Some of the older soldiers glance at them with wry smiles, no doubt remembering their own days of stick fighting, before real blades taught them the weight of steel. As afternoon drifts on, the sun casts long slants of light into the yard, picking out motes of dust, gleaming off helms and warming patches of wall that for most of the day sit in shadow. The pace is steady, not hurried, but relentless. A castle does not permit idleness. Even moments of apparent rest are filled with duties less obvious, but no less vital. A sentry must pace, a kitchen boy must chop, a scribe must sharpen quills and prepare parchment for his lord's letters. The keep is like a living creature, and these are the movements of its limbs, the breaths of its lungs. And yet, amidst all this, there are moments of stillness. A soldier leans on his spear, eyes on the horizon, his thoughts wandering beyond the walls. A laundress pauses, hands on hips, to stretch her back and glance at the sky. The blacksmith wipes his brow, staring for a moment at the flames, as though seeking an answer in their shifting light. These small pauses punctuate the labor, giving it shape, like rests in a long piece of music. By late afternoon, the yard carries the faint smell of supper, already beginning its slow preparation. A hint of herbs, a curl of smoke richer than mere firewood, a promise that the day's work will, in time, be rewarded. But that is still some hours away. For now, the castle ticks on, each task performed, each note struck, the great stone heart beating steadily neath sun and shadow. As the shadows stretch longer across the courtyard, a subtle shift takes hold within the keep. The clamour of the afternoon dies down, hammer blows at the forge grow less frequent, and even the soldiers' drills begin to taper off. Men wipe sweat from their brows, replace blunted blades upon racks, and stretch stiff limbs. The afternoon's labours have left their mark, and all eyes now turn to the promise of supper. The kitchens, once again, throng with life. If the midday meal was a tempest, the evening one is a gale. The great hearths roar louder than ever, the spits groan under the weight of joints of beef and mutton turning slowly over the flames. Fat drips, hissing as it meets embers, and the smell is rich enough to make even the most disciplined mouth water. Pots of stew bubble steadily, thick with onions, carrots, and pulses, their aroma filling every corridor until even the guards on the wall sniff the air like hounds. Cooks shout themselves hoarse to be heard above the din. A boy is scolded for dropping a platter. Another is sent dashing to the buttery for more ale. The head cook oversees all with eyes sharp as a hawk's, tasting with a wooden spoon, adjusting with a pinch of salt here, a sprig of sage there. To feed a household of this size is not a meal but a campaign, and every ladle, knife, and pair of hands must be marshalled like troops on the field. In the great hall, preparations mirror those of midday, but with a deeper sense of ceremony. Fresh rushes are laid, torches mounted in sconces are lit one by one, their flames casting golden pools of light against stone walls. The banners overhead stir gently in the draughts, their colours darkened in the evening glow. Candles are set upon trestles, their wax already dripping onto pewter holders. Soon the hall will be alive once more, though this time the atmosphere leans less towards display and more towards comfort. A household gathering as night draws in. The lord and his family make their entrance as before, though the formality is softened by the hour. The day's business is done, the courtly duties discharged. Now is the time for hearth and board. The lady of the keep carries herself with quiet grace, her children trailing behind, some more reluctantly than others. The steward hovers nearby, ledger at the ready, but even he seems less stiff, though his eyes still linger critically on every pitcher of ale. The food arrives in procession, carried by servants who balance steaming platters with the skill of jugglers. First the bread, fresh loaves still warm, crusts crackling as they are torn. Then trenchers of roasted meat, the skin crisped and shiny, juices glistening as knives carve thick slices. Bowls of pottage are set down, thick and hearty, ladled steaming into wooden bowls. Trays of turnips, peas, and leeks follow, plain fare but plentiful, enough to satisfy the appetite of every soldier, scullion, and steward alike. The hall fills with noise once more, spoons scraping, mugs thumping upon tables, voices rising in laughter and song. Soldiers tuck in with the ravenous energy of men who have laboured long, tearing hunks of bread to mop up gravy, sharing jests over who took the hardest blow in training. The archers toast one another, boasting of arrows sunk close to the mark, while the sergeant grumbles into his ale that none of them could hit the side of a barn if the wind shifted. Laughter follows him nonetheless. At the high table, the lord entertains a handful of retainers, the talk low and measured. Matters of land, rent, and border disputes weave between comments on meat seasoning and the condition of the horses. To the children, the whole affair is dull, and they kick one another under the table until the lady's stern glance stills them. The minstrel once again strikes up a tune, though now his voice must rise above a hall already thick with merriment. The meal stretches on until the torches burn low. Bellies are filled, pitchers drained, and gradually the din subsides. The steward orders the remains gathered, nothing wasted, bones for broth, crusts for the poor, scraps for the hounds. Servants sweep the rushes, douse the torches, and clear the trestles with weary efficiency. Slowly, the hall empties, leaving behind the faint smell of smoke, grease, and spilled ale, mingling with the ever-present wood smoke from the hearth. Meanwhile, life does not pause. As soldiers eat, others take their places upon the walls, for the watch must be kept without interruption. Cloaked figures pace the battlements, spears in hand, their boots crunching against frost now forming under the moon's pale gaze. From above, the sounds of the hall are muffled, replaced by the whisper of wind across stone and the distant hoot of an owl. The keep, for all its bustle, now begins to gather itself inward. Beyond the walls, night spreads across field and forest. Villagers shutter their windows, dogs curl close to hearths, and only the occasional lantern glimmers on the road. Inside the keep, however, the torches burn on, and the rhythm of labour continues. The day is not over, it is simply shifted into another mode, another chapter in the endless cycle of waking, working, eating, and guarding. For those still in the courtyard, the sight of the keep at dusk is a thing both familiar and strangely beautiful. The high towers rise black against the indigo sky, torchlight flickering in arrow slits like watchful eyes. Smoke curls upwards, catching the last of the light before vanishing into dark. It is a view that speaks of endurance, of stone built to outlast storm and season alike. The hour grows late, but the castle does not sleep yet. There are still tasks to finish, duties to fulfill, and the long night watch ahead. Supper has been eaten, the sun has set, and the keep, like a vast living creature, shifts from the rhythm of day into the slower, steadier pulse of evening. The last embers of sunset fade, and the keep enters its nocturnal state. Darkness seeps into every crevice, softening the edges of the towers and deepening the shadows beneath arches and stairwells. Torches are lit along the battlements, their flames shivering in the night breeze, casting long, wavering shadows that seem to march alongside the guards. From a distance, the castle looks like a lantern ship moored upon its hill, stone sails catching the faint light, steadfast amidst a sea of black. The great hall, once so raucous, has calmed. The trestle tables have been cleared, benches pushed back, and the hearth burns lower, its flames a quieter companion to those who linger. A few soldiers sit with mugs of ale, speaking in low voices, their laughter hushed as though instinctively softened by the hour. Others lean back against the walls, boots stretched towards the fire, eyelids drooping in the warmth. The steward has retreated to his chamber, no doubt poring over his endless ledger by candlelight, while the lord and his family withdraw to their private quarters, leaving the hall to the men-at-arms and the fire's watchful glow. Outside, the atmosphere is altogether different. The watch has taken its full strength upon the walls. Cloaked against the chill, guards pace steadily, their footsteps echoing hollowly upon stone. Spears rest upon shoulders, eyes scan the horizon, ears strain for the faintest sound beyond the curtain walls. Each circuit is measured, each pause deliberate, for a distracted watchman is a danger to all within. The world beyond the walls is a black expanse of fields and woodland, shapes half guessed in moonlight, and every rustle of leaves or cry of a night bird stirs the imagination. Yet, it is not all grim duty. Two soldiers, share a whispered joke as they pass one another, their laughter muffled but sincere. Another stamps his feet against the cold, muttering curses at the wind before pulling his cloak tighter. At the gatehouse, men sit huddled near a brazier, warming hands and swapping stories. Their eyes may remain sharp, but their tongues wag freely, telling of hunts gone wrong, girls glimpsed in the village, and rumours of distant wars that seem half fable this far from the border. The kitchen, though quieter now, has not fallen silent. A handful of cooks remain, cleaning pots so blackened they seem permanently part of the hearth. A boy scrubs at a pan with more determination than progress, grumbling as grease resists him. Another snores in the corner, curled against a sack of flour, until a cuff to the ear from the head cook sends him staggering back to his feet. Even in rest, the work continues, for tomorrow's meals must already be prepared in thought, if not yet in deed. In the stables, horses shift and stamp in their stalls, blowing steam into the cool air. A groom walks the rows with a lantern, checking each beast with practiced eye, muttering soothing nonsense to calm the more restless. The scent of hay and dung mingles with the tang of leather and sweat, earthy and grounding. The animals are as much part of the keep's life as the soldiers. Without them, carts would not move, patrols would not ride, hunts could not be mounted. Their steady breathing fills the stable like a deep, shared sigh. Within the keep's upper chambers, chambermaids prepare beds, clumping straw mattresses, laying out cloaks to guard against the cold. The lady of the house has her gown unlaced by nimble-fingered hands, while the younger children, at last subdued by the long day, are coaxed beneath blankets with whispered lullabies. A candle flickers low on a bedside table, throwing soft light across stone walls, catching on the polished brass of a candlestick, the glint of a silver clasp. Beyond the curtains, the wind sighs faintly through narrow windows, a lullaby of its own. The latrines, tucked discreetly at the edge of the yard, do not escape their duties by night. A lantern swings in the hand of a weary servant, his face resigned as he checks that the buckets have been properly emptied, muttering to himself all the while. It is foul work, but necessary, for a castle may withstand siege or storm, yet it will fall swiftly to sickness if such matters are neglected. Even in the most romantic tales of castles, knights and ladies, no ballad ever sings of the man with a shovel in the latrines, and yet without him there would be no keep to sing of. The rhythm of the castle at night is steady, slower than by day, but no less vital. Guards pace, servants clean, animals stir, fires smoulder. Beyond the walls, wolves may prowl, bandits may plot, storms may gather. But within, the stone stands firm, the routines hold steady, and every man and woman plays their part in keeping the darkness at bay. Above it all, the stars prick the sky, bright and cold, indifferent to the small world below. The moon peers down, silvering the battlements, glinting on the helms of watchmen. Time itself seems to breathe more slowly, each moment stretched, each sound amplified. The keep, that great living creature of stone, draws in its breath, preparing for the long hours until dawn. Midnight approaches, and the keep lies under a blanket of stillness. The torches upon the battlements flicker lower, their flames thinner now, their shadows longer. Guards stamp their feet and shift their spears, fighting the heavy pull of drowsiness. The first few hours of watch pass easily enough, buoyed by the memory of supper and the talk of comrades. But in this small hollow between midnight and dawn, when the world itself seems to hold its breath, fatigue sets its claws deep. The great hall has emptied at last. The fire there is reduced to glowing embers, casting a ruddy light across the flagstones. Only a handful of men remain, stretched out upon benches, cloaks pulled over heads. Their snores compete gently with the faint crackle of wood, producing a kind of rough lullaby. A dog curls near the hearth, its tail twitching in dreams, ears pricking now and again at some sound too faint for men to catch. In the shadows above, Bats flit across the rafters, disturbed by the dying fire's smoke, their wings whispering as they swoop for moths. On the walls, the watchmen pace with a rhythm slower than in the early evening. The cold is sharper now, a damp chill that creeps beneath cloaks and gnaws at toes. One man leans against the parapet, blowing warm breath into his hands, staring at the moonlit fields beyond. Every rustle in the hedges below becomes suspicious, every shifting shadow a possible intruder. The imagination plays tricks at this hour. A bush looks like a crouching figure. The wind in the trees sounds like muffled voices. And so, the guard's grip tightens on his spear. His heart beats faster, until the next circuit reveals nothing but leaves and silence. At the gatehouse, two men share a brazier, its coals glowing fiercely. They poke at it idly with bits of wood, the sparks shooting upwards like fireflies. Conversation comes in fits and starts. A story left half-told before yawns overtake the teller. A joke repeated simply to fill the silence. The occasional mutter about when the next shift will relieve them. Their eyes are bloodshot, their movements sluggish, yet their duty remains clear. No door opens, no rope is lowered, no cart is admitted until dawn brings its light. Inside the keep, servants finish their last tasks before retiring. The kitchens have gone quiet, pots scrubbed and stacked, floors strewn with fresh rushes. A lone scullion dozes against the wall, head nodding, until a stern word from the cook rouses him and sends him stumbling off to his pallet. In the stables, the grooms rest upon piles of hay, lanterns extinguished, leaving only the soft sound of horses chewing or stamping in the dark. The animals, too, have their night rhythms, sighing and shifting in their stalls, as though they, too, keep watch in their own way. The latrines, mercifully, are still. The buckets have been emptied, the corners swept. The servant responsible has long since vanished into the gloom of his bedroll, glad to let the castle's less savoury duties rest until morning. Yet even here, in the most ignoble corner of the keep, there is life, the scratching of rats, the scurry of beetles, the inevitable hum of nature, continuing its business, regardless of stone walls or noble banners. There is a curious eeriness to the keep at this hour. By day, every corridor hums with voices, footsteps, orders shouted, laughter shared. But at night, the stones themselves seem louder. The groan of a timber beam settling echoes like a muffled drum. The drip of water from some hidden crack falls into a bucket with maddening regularity. A door slams as a draft sweeps through a passageway, startling even seasoned soldiers. Superstition thrives in such conditions. Whispers of ghosts, of long-dead prisoners wandering the dungeons, of monks' chants heard faintly through the walls. Few claim to believe such tales, yet fewer still are willing to walk the empty stairwells alone after midnight. And yet, amidst the unease, there is also peace. The stars above shine clear, mirrored faintly in the moat's surface. The village below sleeps soundly, roofs dark, chimneys cold. Owls swoop silently across the fields, their calls haunting but strangely comforting. A fox creeps along the hedgerow, pausing to glance at the towering silhouette of the castle before slinking away. All the world outside seems suspended, waiting for the first blush of dawn. Within, those still awake find themselves lulled by the sameness of it all. The pacing of boots upon the wall, the hiss of wind, the occasional creak of a door, together they weave a fabric of continuity. The keep may seem half asleep, but its heartbeat remains steady, its pulse strong. And those who pace, who guard, who sit by embers and resist sleep, are the quiet keepers of that life. Hours slip by unnoticed, marked only by the slow descent of the moon and the shift of guards. Relief comes at last for the men who began the night watch. Weary steps lead them to pallets, where they fall into dreamless slumber before their heads even find the straw. Fresh eyes take their place upon the battlements, yawning but resolute, and the cycle turns on. The night has reached its deepest point, the quietest hour, the moment when even time itself seems to hesitate. And in that pause, in that silence, the castle stands firm, a grey bulk of endurance against the star-strewn sky. The darkest hour of night always feels the longest, yet it passes at last. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, The sky begins to pale. The black above the battlements softens to a deep blue, and the stars retreat one by one, as though reluctant to leave their watch. On the horizon, a thin band of grey lightens the edge of the world. It is not yet dawn, but its approach is sensed in the very air. Within the castle, life begins to stir again. In the kitchens, the bakers rouse themselves, rubbing sleep from their eyes and stifling yawns. Fires that had slumbered in ash are coaxed back to flame with bellows and bundles of kindling. Soon the warmth grows, the smoke curls upwards, and the first loaves of the day begin their slow transformation from dough to bread. The smell, faint at first, seeps into the corridors, promising comfort to those who must rise early. It is an unspoken truth of every castle that the baker is as important as the blacksmith, one for weapons, the other for the will to use them. The guards upon the walls welcome the paling sky with weary relief. Those who have paced for hours, stamping their feet against the cold and straining eyes into the gloom, now see the shapes of fields and hedges returning from shadow. A hedge becomes a hedge once more, no longer a crouching figure. A rustle proves to be nothing more sinister than a rabbit foraging. Shoulders ease slightly, and voices grow more open, less hushed, as if the rising light grants permission to speak more boldly. At the gatehouse, the brazier has burned low. Its coals still glow, but its heat is feeble, barely enough to warm hands. The men gathered around it sigh in unison when they hear the horn from the yard below, signaling that the night's longest shift is nearly done. They will soon be relieved, free to find what sleep they can before their duties return again. Their faces, drawn and tired, brighten at the thought of bread, broth, and the bliss of a straw pallet. Elsewhere in the keep, servants begin their day long before others have finished theirs. Maids carry pails of water up steep staircases, splashing onto stone steps as they climb. Others sweep corridors, where rushes lie flattened and muddied from the night's passage, replacing them with fresh bundles fragrant with mint in time. A boy polishes candlesticks dulled by smoke, his cloth blackened with soot, his hands quick for fear of being caught dawdling. These small, repetitive tasks seem endless, yet without them, the castle would soon appear as tired and ragged as any roadside inn. The animals stir too. In the stables, horses whicker softly, stamping as they sense the day's approach. A groom yawns mightily, lantern in hand, and scatters hay into mangers. Chickens in the yard begin their noisy debate about whether to rise, their squawking cutting through the silence until a servant grumbles and throws them extra grain. Even the dogs, curled beneath benches or tethered in the yard, raise their heads, sniffing the cool morning air that carries the scent of baking bread. By now, the hall is being prepared again. The embers of the great hearth are roused with a poker until flames leap anew, throwing warmth into the cavernous chamber. Benches are straightened, tables wiped, and trenchers set out. It is not yet the hour for the Lord to appear, but when he does, everything must already be in readiness. A castle never allows itself to be caught unprepared, whether for war or for breakfast. For those still on watch, dawn is both blessing and trial. Eyes sting from fatigue, limbs ache, yet the slow spread of light across the fields is enough to buoy spirits. One man points out a distant plume of smoke from a cottage hearth. Another remarks upon the deer moving across the far meadow. The world, so empty and foreboding in the dark, fills once more with familiar detail, and the guards find comfort in naming what they see. And so the keep shakes off the night. It does not leap into action. Rather, it stretches, yawns, and gradually rises, as though reluctant to admit that the cycle must begin anew. The air smells of smoke, damp stone, and fresh bread, a combination both homely and enduring. The castle is never truly silent, never truly still, yet at this hour it feels closest to calm, balanced delicately between the exhaustion of the night and the demands of the day. Soon the bell will ring, calling soldiers from their pallets, summoning servants to new tasks, and rousing even the lord and lady from their slumber. But for a few fleeting moments, in this quiet just before dawn, the keep feels almost at peace. A great stone heart, pausing between beats, waiting for the next day to begin. And so, the 24 hours come to their end. From the clanging dawn bell to the deep silence of midnight, life inside the keep has carried on, a steady rhythm of duty, food, laughter, toil, and watchfulness. Stone walls may stand unmoved, but the people within breathe their days much as we do, in meals, in chores, in stories shared beside a fire. As you rest now, I hope the steady hum of castle life has soothed you and perhaps carried you gently towards sleep. If this quiet journey brought you comfort, do remember you can subscribe so that each night we can wander through another chapter of history together. Until then, may your dreams be peaceful, your hearth warm, and your rest as steady as the stone of the castle keep. Good night.